What better day to drive a Clio RS than on a cold, damp day. So this is another point of view video, everyone, and this time, as you can see, we're in Chloe, the Renault Clio RS 220 trophy. And although the weather is a little bit moist, we're going to put a bit of sport action on, I think. We'll put it in sport because it'll be a little bit livelier, it will sound a little bit nicer, but the traction control will still be on. Oh, it sounds lovely. So my RS Clio does not do enough mileage, so even though today is not exactly perfect weather for a car that's front wheel drive and 220 horses, still needed to go out. Is it called Sod's Law, everyone, when you come up behind cyclists and tractors and stuff, and it's either on a hill, as my sat-nav warns about a camera, either on a hill or a corner, or in this case by a junction. What should we chat about today then? I think we'll talk about people that drive at night without the lights on, and fog lights. Fog lights in particular was relevant this morning because, well, it was foggy this morning, to be fair. So first of all, driving without your lights on at night, I'm sure you will agree that more and more people seem to be driving down the roads with no lights on. And what's the cause of that? Well, there's a few things, isn't there? One, of course, is they're not very observant, are they? Because they should know that their lights aren't on. The second thing I would say is, okay, many cars have got daytime running lights. Many of those daytime running lights are quite bright LEDs, and I guess some of those are therefore giving a bit of a glow on the road surface in front, so I guess it's making the driver think that the lights are on, maybe. But I think the biggest culprit by a mile is that most modern cars, they illuminate the dash, don't they? They illuminate the dash as soon as the ignition comes on, whereas in the old days, so like in my Fiesta, my Metro, my Imp, you kind of knew that the headlights were on anyway, because, well, A, of course you should notice that they're on because they're shining on the road ahead, but also because the dashboard would be lit up. But now that's been taken away from you. It's just another thing that has been done, I guess, to improve safety. Obviously the daytime running lights is to improve safety, but do you not think the more safety things that we fit to cars, the more backwards we go as drivers, because it's just making it, dare I say, too easy for some, and they're just so laid back. I've discussed in a previous video that more and more people seem to drive well above the speed limits. They take bigger chances. Driving standards in general are just quite terrible in the UK at the moment. You can still have fun on the roads, and I do still have fun on the roads, but you've got to have a wits about you. You've got to be thinking about everybody else all the time. And I think one of the reasons for the safety standards dropping is because cars have just got almost too safe. Okay, you can't have a car that's too safe, but you know what I mean. Cars are getting so safe now. Obviously the anti-lock brakes, fantastic piece of kit. Stability control, traction control, there's lane departure warnings, obviously airbags, crumple zones. Cars are very safe, but as the cars get safer and safer, I think it's making driving standards less and less. Do you agree? Let me know in the comments below, as I always say. I think it does, and I think that's a shame. The one thing that you're acutely aware of, or I certainly am when I drive the Metro or the Imp or the Fiesta, is you're in a car that hasn't got any crumple zones. Okay, it might be built quite solid, but it's not going to absorb any accidents, is it? My body's going to absorb it instead. And if you think of the speeds that a lot of people drive now, it would be almost unbearable to think of going around a corner, particularly on a fast A road, only to have someone overtaken and therefore be on your side of the road. There isn't going to be much chance for me in my older cars, is there? But that person will be taking that chance because they feel almost invincible. What's the answer? I don't think there is. I guess the only answer is that driving standards will continue to drop because there isn't enough traffic officers on the road in the UK, because of course the police, like most services, are underfunded, chronically underfunded, I would say. I guess we're going to just get a continued degradation, if I can say it, of driving standards until we get to that point in the future where cars are, well, driverless. That day's going to come, but as I'm filming this, I think we've had a few years where we've been thinking that's round the corner, and I know there are some driverless applications already out there, but I think for the general public, driverless cars are still quite a few years away. Anyway, I just think it's a shame, I really do. But then of course it's when to use your lights and when to use fog lights. So this morning I was out not filming and it was quite foggy, but although it's quite foggy you could still see well into the distance. At what point do you think you should use your fog light? And for the benefit of doubt, I'm talking about the ones at the back. I'm not convinced the ones at the front really do much at all for visibility for the driver. Of course, they help make it more visible for oncoming traffic. But the fog lights or fog lamps at the back, when do you put them on? So as I say, for me, the distance I could see this morning was still substantial, so I didn't feel the need to put that, let's be honest, quite bright light on the back of the car. I guess if visibility is below, it's going to sound an arbitrary number, but I'm going to say 200 yards, maybe I'd put it on. Let me know in the comments when you'd put it on. Now what I did see this morning, of course, is there was a couple of people that had the fog lights on, and in my opinion it wasn't needed. However, I would much prefer to see that than what I also saw this morning, which was other vehicles. And if you think that common colours of vehicles now are black, grey, silver, even white, you don't notice them in fog, do you, so easily? And they're driving around with no lights on. Again, it's just poor awareness, isn't it? What do you reckon? All part of the package of driving standards being low. Now the visibility today is completely fine now, absolutely fine. I haven't got my lights on, but I have got some particularly bright daytime running lights on the front of this Clio. If the visibility did change a little, I would of course put my headlights on. But as I say, let me know in the comments, when would you use your fog lamps? When would you use your headlights? Just thought you'd give us something to chat about while doing a point of view in the Clio. Point of view that's not testing the sport mode that we're in at the minute, that's for sure. But as we drop into the village known as Kings Bromley, something I want to say about the RS Clio. If you ever travel or own, if you drive one of these cars, or if you're just interested in one of these cars, in normal mode, to be quite honest, if you can put up with the firmer suspension, because this has got a cup chassis, because at the end of the day it's designed to race around on the track, it's just a very smooth, very quiet place to be. There is very little to indicate, unless you go over the bumps of course, which again there are many in the UK, as I always say. There's very little to indicate that you're in a quick car. It tootles along, no problem at all. The gear changes of course are super smooth because it's a dual clutch, so it's always got next gear ready. It's just absolutely lovely. But then of course, if you're feeling a bit frisky and you want a bit of fun, and the road allows you to, and the lack of traffic allows you to, then sticking it in sport mode well, it just changes it. And it really is a fun piece of kit. I have briefly used this car in race mode, but to be quite honest, there isn't much relevance to do that on the public roads. Save that for the track. It does turn the hero aids off, so obviously you get a warning light on the dash to say traction control's off. It's all over to you. The gears will only change either A, to protect the engine, or B, because you tell it to, otherwise they won't change. But as I say, the hero aids are off, and I just think, wow, you don't need to do that on the public road there. Anyway, let's go down a couple of gears. As you can see, it gets the speed limit quite quick. Now, 0 to 60 in this Clio, it is just a hot hatch at the end of the day, and it's a modest sized hot hatch. It's about 6.5 seconds, and 6.5 seconds doesn't probably sound that fantastic anymore in this modern world, and it certainly doesn't sound fantastic when compared to many of the EVs that are out there. But I would challenge that it's not all about the 0 to 60s. I think many of you are going to agree what I'm going to say next. It's about the whole experience. It's about the theatre of what you get in that 6.5 seconds, because in this car it's a very firm ride, as we've already said. It's a cup chassis, and it's just, well, it's very unforgiving. It's great round corners, particularly with the Michelin Sport Pilot, or Michelin Contact Sport Pilot 4s, whatever they're called. They are super grippy in the wet and the dry. You've got the super quick gear changes, which in sport and race mode in particular are even quicker, but to be quite honest, you would struggle to change gear any quicker in a manual. Okay, yes, it's took a bit of that process away from you, and there's an argument that it's cool to be able to change gears yourself, but actually when you're tootling along, it's lovely just to be in lazy mode and leave it in automatic, and when you're having fun, it's awesome to use the pedals. So the gears are changing quick. You got the exhaust note, which again in sport and race, Rover Metro, the gears, which again when you're changing down in particular, you get the pops and the bangs. They're not overly done, they're just nice and subtle, but they're really cool. So you've got the noise, you've got the feel, you've got the quick gear changes. It all adds to the theatre. Looking at the car sales again, because you never know what's for sale. It all builds to the whole, well, it just builds the enjoyment, doesn't it? I have driven an EV, and I've written a blog about EVs. I'm not anti-EV. I'll put a link to the blog in the description below the video, everyone. I'm not anti-EV. I'm open to different options, and I do believe that certain applications certainly benefit an EV, others benefit just being an hybrid. But what I say in the blog is, what I don't buy into is the rhetoric and being almost forced to go down one path, when I don't think having all eggs in one basket is the solution. And it's certainly not going to be the solution for heavier vehicles. I don't think it's going to be a workable solution for many vans, but it's certainly not going to be a solution, in my opinion, for heavy vehicles. Other solutions are coming. We just shouldn't be forced down the path quite so quick. Anyway, I say more about that in the blog. Again, I'm intrigued to see what you think of what I've written. Let me know in the comments. Oh, it sounds lovely. I'm turning off because I'm bored of following a line of traffic. Oh, I think I might get a shot of the car while I'm here, if I don't ground out with all the bumps. Right, the trick's going to be to get moving when the traffic is going over the bridge the other way. Yep, let's get out before the traffic comes over. Yes, the roads are greasy. Just got to know the limitations of the car. And not to get too close to them. Oh, I do love these gear changes. You know, when the day comes that I sell Chloe, I might still want to replace it with another hot hatch. What would I buy? Now obviously finances play a big part in that decision, of course, but what other hot hatches could I go for? Let me know in the comments what you like hot hatch wise. See, I love Fiat 500 Abarths. I love Civic Type R's. I love this Clio, to be fair. Let me know in the comments. That is always going to make me smile. Oh dear. Well, I'll tell you one last thing I want to have a quick chat about. I was travelling, as in my wife's Peugeot 108, I was travelling back from sort of the NEC direction on country roads, sort of around Henley and Arden type area, and we're driving along and you could see a film on the road surface, an oily film of course, I don't mean the latest blockbuster, and there was a cash guy down in the hedge with some police tape around it. So I backed off because obviously you were aware that there was something on the road. It was a judgment call as to how much to back off, because of course cars behind might not be so cautious, but you ultimately don't want to fall off the road. So when I got the chance and there was no one behind, I did a bit of a brake test and it was quite slippy. So anyway, fast forward a couple of minutes, I took my time, but I wasn't going too slow either. I was just sort of, it was a national speed limit road and I think it was doing about 35-40 mile an hour. Well, in hindsight maybe that was a little too quick too, because as I got down to a particularly sharp left-hander, okay, I was, as I say, definitely taking it easier than I would normally. But as I went round that left-hander, about no more than say 50 yards down the road was closed and you were having to turn right. So there was a car stationary at the road closed sign waiting to turn right, and I applied the brakes, and thankfully, of course, the 108 being modern, and we spoke about being safety features in cars earlier in the video, didn't we everyone? The ABS kicked in. In fact, the ABS kicked in quite a lot. Now I asked myself afterwards, I was being cautious. You probably can't allow for every eventuality, but it was obviously there was diesel on the road surface and it was just extremely slipping. And I did ask myself afterwards, I thought, would I have been able to have stopped in time? Now of course by that point there was also a car behind, and you're trying to allow, aren't you? Safe driving involves you allowing for the vehicle behind as well, so you can mitigate as many possible problems as you can. But it just made me think, could I have stopped? Now thankfully of course I did stop with the ABS. Thankfully the car behind stopped as well. Hand on heart, as my car warns me there's a speed camera ahead, hand on heart, I'm not 100% certain. It would have been at worst a very, very minor nudge, but I would have still have been very disappointed in myself, because ultimately I knew I had a warning, didn't I, that you could see that the road had got what I believe to be diesel on it. So anyway, we live to fight another day. But have you ever had a similar scenario where the road surface has tricked you? It could be a perfectly dry surface, it could be a wet surface, but either way, you've driven along and all of a sudden you've realised, stop beeping car, all of a sudden you've realised that actually it was a lot slippier than you thought. And do you do the trick that I did and do a brake test where it's safe to do so? I like doing that. In the rare occasion that we get snow or ice in the UK now, I will usually just occasionally test the road surface. I mean, obviously if the road is full of snow, full of ice, I know it's going to be very slippy, but sometimes you get that in between, don't you? So if there's nothing behind, I do occasionally do a bit of a brake test. Anyway, that's it for the point of view today in Chloe, the Renault Clio RS 220 trophy, to give it a full name. If you enjoyed following along with me, give it a thumbs up, because it really does help build the channel. And if you're not subscribed, there's going to be a link somewhere up here. It's a bit difficult to work out where because I'm driving point of view. Click on it, it's free, but again, it does show your support and it does help build this channel. I enjoy the community that we have. And on that note, enjoy whatever it is you're driving. And I'll see you soon.